So I hope you're beginning to build up a better understanding of what we mean when we talk about the second coming of Jesus, the return of the King. We see that Jesus will return on the clouds for his church, that we've called the rapture, that Jesus will touch down on the earth on the Mount of Olives, that there'll be a resurrection of believers to the rewards that we have, and that sense of the Bible teaching of us ruling with Jesus for 1,000 years, and a judgment of unbelievers, of Satan, of death and Hades, and being cast into the lake of fire, followed by a new heavens and new earth, and eternity being restored. As we work through the end times, there are a couple of things for us just to go through to help round off. Over time, you've probably heard a number of expressions, and I promise to work through these to help us sort of understand where they fit. And one of the other features of the second coming is what you might have heard when people talk about Armaggedon. Now, what is Armaggedon? And we're not talking here about a film with Bruce Willis, but actually the Bible identifies in Revelation 16 and verse 16, there is a recognition of a battle that takes place at the end of time, this great sort of final battle, and it happens at a place called Armaggedon. To help us understand that, it's good again to look back and to draw on some other references. And in Daniel chapter 11, we see that it talks about the kings of the north gathering. And in Revelation 16, we see that there's this battle of the great day of the Lord that happens. These things come together to help us sort of understand something of what's meant by Armaggedon. Armaggedon is the name of the place where this great final battle happens, where at the end of the tribulation there's a major battle where Satan and all the forces of the enemy gather together in opposition to God. And to understand this, we need to understand that it's part of that process that God has for dealing with sin and the end of the world. That actually he allows this to come to fruition because it allows for all of the world's corrupt systems to be dealt with, for all of the corruptness to be brought together to a climax, for a judgment once and for all. And it follows in context in Revelation 16 from people repeatedly refusing to repent and return to God. And we see that in chapter 16 verses 9 and 11. So before we get to this great big battle at the end of time where Satan and his forces oppose God, it's important that we understand that people have, prior to this, despite everything that they've gone through in the tribulation, still refuse to acknowledge Jesus, to repent of their sins and to come to him for salvation. We said that Armaggedon is a real place. And to understand something of this, it's good to understand again something of the history and the context. And as we read through Revelation 16, we see this picture that the Euphrates is dried up. And the Euphrates is a river that the geography of it runs through Iraq, through Syria and through Turkey. And it's the means that there is to sort of dry up that creates a natural barrier to stop the kings of the north and the kings of the east coming towards Israel. Now, it is possible for that to happen, maybe through man-made means. You know, I believe there's a dam that's been made in Turkey that has the capability of stopping the flow of the Euphrates. So it is possible for that to happen. And what we see in Revelation 16 is that when the Euphrates is dried up, it allows the kings to gather in battle and to come together against the nation of Israel. Physically against the nation of Israel, but against the people of God. And we can look and we can surmise about the geography of it. But if we look at the geography today, to the north we see great mighty nations of Russia and China. And what we see in Revelation, what we see in Daniel, is that the armies that gather for this final battle make up many, many millions. It's quite possible in today's terms for some of that to happen. But equally to the east, we can see some of the Muslim nations that surround Israel, and the current political map of the region is pretty volatile, where you have Syria, Iraq, Iran, these Muslim nations opposed to Israel. So if we look at it through natural human terms, and we see this sense of the nations gathering against Israel at the end of time, we can maybe see that it's not quite such a far-fetched idea as we might first think.